A lot of people right now losing their mind about statues, right?
The angry children you watch set fire to Wendy's and topple statues and scream at you on television day after day are truly and utterly stupid.
Black, pink, purple, white, we're all here for the same reason. We're all the same people. We're here to save our heritage, our history, trying to teach it and put it down through generation after generation.
Under the executive order I signed last week pertaining to the Veterans Memorial Preservation and Recognition Act and other laws, people who damage or deface federal statues or monuments will get a minimum of 10 years in prison.
You know, I've taken the stance in the past that I don't think the Confederate statues should be removed, but I made it clear then, and I'll make it clear now, I don't really care. You know, they're just symbols, and people tend to put whatever they want into symbols, you know? I don't think that everybody who appreciates the statues is necessarily appreciating the racism. I understand that it's tied into the history of those statues, but that's not how people perceive fucking symbols. I'll tell you, I live in the South. A lot of these people around here, people who are not fucking racist, at least not overtly racist, they can disconnect the racism from those statues in a way that people on the left can't. Maybe just because they're more ignorant. Maybe just because they're more in denial. I don't know if it really matters. I don't know. I just don't really fucking care, right? One person looks at a statue and says, oh yeah, this is a tribute to the great racism of the past, and I, as a racist, also love this statue. Another person looks at the statue and says, well, this is part of my, you know, rebel heritage. In the South, although they made some mistakes, I ultimately still connect with that rebellious fucking spirit of, you know, we're not going to take it anymore kind of shit. And another person looks at it and says, oh, this statue commemorates and glorifies racism, which I hate, so I hate this statue. And meanwhile, it's just a fucking statue, right? Like, there was an intent when it was created. There was an intent when it was displayed. But ultimately, what it means is going to be different based on the fucking person, because a statue ultimately is not a piece of history, or it is a piece of history, but it's not meant to document history. It's meant as a work of art that, I guess, glorifies something, right? Glorifies a larger-than-life figure or personality. Ultimately, I feel like statues, because they are works of art, probably belong in an art museum somewhere. I'm sure there's plenty of art museums all across this country and all across this globe that would be happy to display some new exhibits, right? It's, get some new people coming through. And hey, even if it becomes like, oh, it's going to be racists are going to come and glorify these statues at the museum. Like if someone opens like a, racist statue gallery. So what? Make the curator of the museum a black dude and fucking give fucking 30% of the proceeds to the black community or whatever, Black artists, help it support whatever fucking cause you need. So that every fucking racist that goes there to jerk off to a statue of Stonewall Jackson is fucking helping out the NAACP or some shit. You know what I fucking love, though? It's all the conservatives, the Republicans and shit, who really, are super adamant in their defense of these statues. Like, these statues are part of our history, and to tear down these statues, you're tearing down our history. It's an assault on our history. Those are the same motherfuckers who are like, really, it was the Democrats that did slavery, There was no party switch. That's a myth. Well, then why are you as Republicans, the party of Lincoln, defending Confederate statues? Ooh, oops. Forgot about that, I guess. But now there's a lot of people saying, well, if you're going to tear these Confederate statues down, well, what about the statues of our great founding fathers? Who Americans just hold the founding fathers. The founding fathers. Oh, what would they think? The founding fathers are so venerated in this fucking country. You see, grown adults having political discussions about contemporary issues, talking about what the founding fathers would have thought, right? Like, I think that if Alexander Hamilton were here, he would hang his head in shame at what we've done. Or, I think if Thomas Jefferson were here, I think he'd be proud to see this new legislation being passed, or whatever. Like, who fucking cares? Who fucking cares what a bunch of fucking rich, old, dead, fucking pieces of shit think or would have thought about something going on today? And you know, for whatever faults Thomas Jefferson may have had, and he had a few, like, you know, raping the slave girls and stuff, but at the end of the day, he knew this shit. He knew not to fucking be beholden to the founding fathers, or enshrine them, or, treat them like their shit doesn't stink. He knew that, just as he didn't want to be beholden to the men who came before him, we should not be beholden to him or his ilk, because things will change. Society will evolve, and it will evolve past the need for the founding fathers. And it should have already happened, but unfortunately it seems like it fucking hasn't. I'm not here to tell you whether or not there should be a statue of George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or James Madison or fucking Thomas Paine or John Adams or any of those fucking people. I'm not here to tell you that. I'm not here to tell you whether or not they should be on the money, or whether or not they should be the statue, or where it's appropriate to display the statue. What I can tell you is that they were complicated fucking figures, right? They did some good things. They did some bad things. A lot of the bad things they did were pretty fucking beyond the pale bad. Like, hey, I accrued a bunch of slaves, and I wrote racist manifestos about why the slaves are inferior and why it's okay for me to enslave them. And I raped my slaves, and I fucking impregnated my slaves, and had fucking mulatto babies that I didn't acknowledge with my slaves. Like, stuff like that, Little things like that. I mean, also, let's be honest about the fucking motives of the founding fathers here. They didn't found this country, and I've said this before, but it seems like I should say it again. They didn't found this country because they were some, great freedom-loving dudes that just wanted America to have freedom and liberty. Hell, in many ways, America was freer before they fucking established the United States. This is a Renegade History of the United States by Thaddeus Russell. And some of the stuff he gets into is some of the debauchery, degeneracy, and just all-around weird libertine shit that was going on in America before the founding fathers cracked down on all of it because they found it to be personally embarrassing. They weren't about freedom. They were about money, and they were about power, and they didn't want to share power with the fucking crown anymore. They're like, what the fuck are we giving this guy all our money for? We're over here, we run this fucking country, why are we paying a fucking tithe to that dude? Let's use the civil unrest that's already going on in our country between the classes. Let's turn that class antagonism towards the British, use it to our advantage, act like we're going to fix things for the peasantry and the commoners. We'll trick a bunch of poor folks into fighting our war for us by paying them $6.66 a month to enlist in our Revolutionary Army. We'll overthrow the British from the safety and comfort of our fucking mansions and plantations and manors. And then, we'll have our own country. We can make our own rules. We can do what we want. And then we're the kings. We'll do a republic. It'll be a little better. It'll be a little bit more progressive. That was really their big contribution. It's like, we'll do a republic. Should we let women vote? No. Should we free the slaves? No. And none of this is to say that the founding fathers didn't do some good shit, that they weren't some intelligent dudes with some forward-thinking ideas on an issue or two. It's not to say that they didn't make tremendous political contributions to their time. It's not to say that there's no value in the country that they created or anything like that. But at the end of the day, they were not gods. They were not perfect men. They were not these mythical figures who, I cannot tell a lie, Father. I chopped down the cherry tree. That story's a lie. That didn't fucking happen. A lot of the fucking stuff that we believe about the founding fathers is just myth It's a myth. It's a story. It's just a fanciful fucking notion that we tell ourselves to feel good. And maybe it's time for a revision. You know, like, people are always fucking shitting on revisionist history. Well, we already live in a revisionist history. You know, like, all the stuff we were taught, none of it was fucking true, or very little of it was. We were taught a very grandiose, sanitized, glorified, heroified fucking version of events. Maybe it's time to revise it to something a little bit closer to the truth, or to look at it from a different fucking perspective, at a different angle. Maybe it's time to stop building statues of George Washington and going, "Ah, yes, George Washington, a flawless man if ever there was one." And by the way, I don't believe in judging these figures by the morality of our time, nor do I believe in judging them by the morality of their time, because at the end of the day, morality is just a fucking opinion. So I would like to look at it in a much more utilitarian manner and just ask ourselves what best serves the interest of the people here and now. And I think what best serves the interest of the people here and now is to engage in a discussion of history that's a little bit more inclusive to the fucking modern day demographics of America. Does that mean revising history? If anything, it means maybe looking at it a little bit more accurately and getting rid of this idea that it was a bunch of, like, great, sainted, wise, sagacious men who are just like, "Oh, guys, I have a fucking brilliant idea. I call it America. It's gonna be dope as fuck. We're gonna have freedom. We're gonna have corn dogs. We're gonna have Ferris wheels. It's gonna be fucking badass." In my mind, America is just a fucking... it's just like a traveling carnival, you know? So whatever, it basically is. With bombs. That's not the real history of America. Stop fucking running with that just because it sounds good and it gets your fucking red, white, and blue dick hard, alright? Because that's not the real deal. There was a little bit more to it than that. There was a lot of classism, sexism, racism, strife, struggle, people's revolts that were squashed, like Washington crushing the fucking Whiskey Rebellion and shit like that. This was not a tale of, like, these sainted, wise men who did the right thing at all times and had perfect moral wisdom to the point where we need to venerate them to this day, to the point where we need to constantly ask ourselves what they would think. We don't need to ask ourselves what they would think. They're dead. They had their time. They had their day in the sun. They had their influence. They did what they needed to do. Now it's fucking, the ball has moved from their court to the court of several generations that preceded us, and now the ball's in our court, so now it's up to us to decide not only what we're going to do moving forward, but how we're going to perceive where we've been. And, so if that means tearing down some statues, and if that means changing the way we talk about history, then I'm all for it. Because the way we talk about it now is basically as a fairy tale. And it's time to fucking grow up and stop living in the fucking fantasy.